Welcome back to Toll Racing. I think it's pretty safe to say that most of us have seen these plug-in coolers now. They're basically refrigerators slash freezers. And this is one from Vevor. They sent it to me to do a review on and see what I think of it. And spoiler alert, I actually really like this thing, and it's been pretty cool. I've already done all the testing on it, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. But first, I'm going to tell you about some of the features that a cooler has. One, this is a dual zone. It can be a dual zone. So it has a divider on the inside, and it has a zone so you can set one side to freeze and one side to refrigerate. That's really cool. If you take the divider out, it automatically knows that, and it changes the little computer there to a single zone. So you can have it be an entire freezer, or you can have it be just a refrigerator. You get to set the temp all the way down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. The other thing I'd like to point out is there's a couple different models of this, and I'm going to leave links to both of them, or to a few of them down in the description below. This model is a little bit cheaper than the equivalent size one that has like more of an off-road style wheel, and it has a track and like a rack with a handle on it. I actually like that one better, but this is the one they sent me. They're both essentially the same cooler, just the one with the off-road tires, the bigger tires and the better handle and stuff costs a little bit more. This one is fine, and it's a little more compact than that one. So if you're just gonna, have this in your rig, and you're not really planning on dragging it around, this might be the better way to go. It's a little cheaper and it's a little bit smaller physically on the outside. It is a 55 quart cooler. I did some testing. I tested how long a battery will last if you just plug it into a general car battery. We took it on a road trip to see how well it worked, starting with everything at room temperature. I set one side to freeze and one side to refrigerate. And it was about a 5.5, 6 hour road trip. And we saw how well it did. Then I left it plugged in overnight on my rig to see if the rig would start the next morning. And then I plugged it into a battery and with a nice gauge on it and everything, so we could see how many watts it used over the course of the days until the battery is dead and would no longer run the cooler. There's 3 different battery protection modes on this thing. So if you're leaving it in a rig that you need to start the next day, you'd have it in the highest battery protection mode. And we did that on the Denali, and spoiler alert, it started the next day just fine. But it did run the battery down enough to where the cooler said, nope, we're not going to pull any more power from the battery. The other thing I did is I saw how long the thing would last not plugged into anything. So after everything was frozen on the one side and cold on the other, I turned it off and I let it sit there, and to see how long everything would stay frozen on the one side and just kind of, cold on the other side. We did that as well. So somehow we kind of tested the durability of a brand new Walmart battery with it. We saw if it added up to what the claimed numbers are on it. And so that's kind of an added bonus. So we got a Walmart EverStart battery, and we basically duty cycled it until it wouldn't run the cooler anymore with the lowest level of battery protection on the cooler to drain the battery as much as possible. So that's kind of a little bit of a bonus because I've had really good luck with EverStarts, but I have to say, spoiler alert again, I'm a little disappointed in the reserve capacity of that battery and the watt hours, because I was able to log that of how many watt hours of power that battery actually was able to use. So this cooler does come with a 110 adapter, so you can use it just plugged into a normal outlet. If you have, say you're at a RV site or something and you have power there, it will run off that as well. So you don't have to run it off your battery and drain your battery down if you're there. Basically just run it in the car on the way there, and then once you get there, you can plug it in to shore power if that's available, which is definitely the way to go instead of draining your battery all the time. So let's get into the testing and we'll see how this thing does. And I think you're going to be pretty impressed. So the first thing I need to do is put some drinks in it. So I'm just going to put drinks in here, and that'll give us our baseline test. These are all room temperature, which is right around 80 degrees. So now that those are in there, we're going to go on a road trip. This is going to be about a 6-hour trip. It's just going to be plugged into the back, starting with everything at room temp. As far as settings go, I'm going to be -4 Fahrenheit and 34 Fahrenheit on the other side. This is us after the trip. So after 6 hours, we're at 34 degrees and 12 degrees on the freezer side. So we didn't quite hit our -4. Let's see how frozen the water bottles got on the freezer side. I don't know if 6 hours is quite enough to get those down. And, well, they actually started to freeze, but they're still in the works of being frozen. So the next test will be, I'm going to leave this thing on all night and see if it kills the battery. We're on battery protection level low, or high, I mean. So, and it shut off. So E1, so it drained the battery enough to send the freezer into protection mode. Let's see how frozen we are. And we're probably a little less frozen than we were. So let's see if the vehicle will still start now. And it did. So it starts, so it didn't kill the battery, so the battery protection worked. So it ran, but it must not have ran for very long. All right, so now we'll go in the shop. I'm going to plug it into AC just to see what it draws on AC, which is 55 watts, which is less than an amp. So it's actually pretty effective. And you saw my thermostat there. It's about 80 degrees in my shop. So that's what we're dealing with. So now I got a Group 65 EverStart battery from Walmart. It's a brand new battery. I charged it all the way. It says it has 160 amp hours of reserve, or it says reserve. I assumed amp hours. So I calculated that to watt hours, and that comes out to right around 2,000. So we'll see if this pulls it out. This is not a deep cycle battery. This is like a traditional car battery. So I have it on. It's running at about 2.5 amps. Currently, I saw it go as high as 3.5 amps during its process, which is around 40 watts or so is what it's drawing on the battery. It is set currently at 34 degrees on the refrigerator side and 10 degrees on the freezer side. It's currently, as we're looking at it, 36 degrees. That's because I had it open. So it is cooling off on the refrigerator side right now, which is probably why the amps were a little lower than it was than the peak, which is around 3.5 amps. So why I did that, I had it plugged in while the battery was charging to AC power to see if, while we were freezing the one side, if the other side froze, and it didn't. So it froze the freezer side solid, and it didn't freeze at all our other side. Okay, so now we're fast forwarding to about 38 hours later. The battery, it just died. I reset it and started it again so I kind of see what the voltages and stuff were. And it's on E1. It's again on the lowest battery protection. And it made it, and it didn't quite go all the way down to 9.6, and it just aired out again. E1 again, so battery protection mode again. So it's not quite making it down to the 9.6 like it said, but either way, that battery is pretty dead, and it didn't make it nearly to 2,000 hours. So we're around 2,000 watt hours. It's around 927 watt. All right, so summary time on our Vevor cooler. Can I recommend this Vevor cooler? And yes, I actually really like it. And I think the price point is pretty spot on it. It's actually pretty comparable to a cooler that, like a high quality, non-refrigerated cooler. So I really like that. I really like that I don't have to mess with ice and water and soggy sandwiches and all that stuff that comes along with having a traditional cooler, which I think are great for what we basically had in this one, but nothing else. So what's cool about this is we can actually store other things, frozen food or whatever, in this cooler and take it with us, and everything will be hunky-dory. So can I recommend this cooler? Yes, I actually do like this cooler, and I'm not just saying that because they gave it to me to do a review on. I actually do like it. Now I'm going to point out the things I don't like about this cooler, because it's not an honest review if you don't. So here are some of the things that I don't like. I'm going to start with right here. I don't like how flimsy this is when you're pushing this plug in. It's very flimsy, and I feel like eventually that's going to break. I don't really like that. I also don't particularly like this style of wheel. However, it does have its purpose. But if I were to buy this on my own, I would buy the other one that has the longer handle, the bar style handle, the rack one, with the larger off-road wheels. That's my personal preference. I do like the computer that they have on it. It's easy to use. It has a couple settings that you actually have to have the manual for to know how to use, which is like changing the battery protection from low, medium, or high. The manual's in there. You don't really need me to show you how to do any of that. It's very easy to do. You don't have to, if you want to use it as a single compartment, all you have to do is remove that, and basically you're going to lose the sides functionality. It's just blank, because you're just changing the entire cooler instead of one side or the other. So it automatically knows. It must have some sort of a magnetic sensor in there if that divider is in. and it works well. So we had never froze. Even this thing ran for about a week inside between all my testing on AC and charging the battery and all that stuff. I never froze the stuff I didn't want frozen, and the stuff that I did want frozen stayed frozen solid, and it stayed at 10. Now, how often did this run in our ambient 80-degree temperature shop? It seemed like it was on about 50% of the time or so. So if that helps you, obviously if this is sitting out in direct sun, it's going to use more power because it's going to have to run more often. If you can keep it in the shade, it's going to be more efficient on battery life. If you can keep it inside the RV or your vehicle that's cooler, it's not going to run as often. So if you're only going to have it plugged in during transport, and then while you're at your campsite or whatever, then I would recommend doing like what we did here, where I froze something on this side, like bottles of water, and I didn't freeze this side. And then maybe once you get there, take the divider out, and then you have basically your ice is your frozen bottles of water, and then as they cool down and stuff, you can drink them, but it'll keep the rest of the cooler cold. Or that's an idea of a way you can use it that way. It does have, and I should point out, there is a drain plug. So if you do want to put traditional ice in it, there's a plug. However, you have to get to it. You're going to have to go through it and pull it out that way. So that's how the plug works. It's easy to use. It's not an external plug like a traditional cooler would have. So you'll have to drain it that way if you're going to use it traditionally. Otherwise, I think that about sums it up. I really like the cooler. I have zero complaints overall about it, that other than just kind of the chintzy plastic down here. And it's really not chintzy. It's just the fact that you're pushing on it. Otherwise, it's really not an issue. The handles are tough. Everything else seems like it works good. The lid does come off if you want to clean it. You just have to get it to the right angle, and it'll lift off because they're slotted, kind of like a tailgate on the truck. So the lid does come off if you do want to take it apart and clean it. Otherwise, really cool cooler. I really like it. I probably do not need my traditional coolers now. I don't see me ever using a traditional cooler after having this one. I don't know why you would ever need a traditional cooler unless you're going to be completely off grid, not around a vehicle or anything that could run this. That would be the only reason where a really high quality cooler may be better option for this. But if you have a way of at least running this during the day, I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't, why this cooler wouldn't be the better option, especially if you're only going to have one cooler, because it'll still work as a traditional cooler. Just unplug the cord, which is tight, and now you can kind of see like what I was talking about. This can be a traditional cooler too, so you can use it either way. So it's just not the best traditional cooler in the world, but a traditional cooler can't freeze things. So I really like it. So anyway, there you have it. Links in the description below. Yes, I make commission on it if you use those links, so please do. And we will see you on the next one.